an unexpected nominee. And here they are, the delegates meeting with Lincoln in Springfield, delegates of the Republican nominating committee. In May 1860, a special committee arrived at Abraham Lincoln's Springfield home with an important message. Delegates at the Republican National Convention in Chicago had selected him to run as their party's candidate for president. His nomination probably surprised some Republicans because Lincoln had not been the front runner. My name is new in the field, he said, and I suppose I am not the first choice of a great many. Most people expected the party to pick one of the more prominent, such as William Seward of New York or Salmon Chase of Ohio. But Lincoln had an important advantage. He seemed moderate enough to attract undecided voters. His Illinois supporters had worked hard to win over the delegates. He had earned a reputation as an effective speaker who opposed the spread of slavery, which was the most important issue uniting members of the new Republican Party. The Republicans held their 1860 nominee convention in the Wigwam, a temporary wooden meeting hall near the Chicago River. This stovepipe hat was the one that Lincoln wore when he left Illinois, headed to Washington for his inauguration. The stovepipe hat became his trademark. He found it useful for storing notes. Meet Mr. Lincoln. He was elected president in November 1860 with less than 40% of the vote. On the eve of his inauguration, most Americans knew little about him. Most Northerners hoped he was no Buchanan, the weak, outgoing president. They knew that Lincoln advocated standing up to slavery. But how? This one-term congressman from Illinois had held no military command, no leading position in the industry. He had done well as a lawyer. He was a canny politician, but he had been influential only in his home state. Most Southerners viewed Lincoln with distrust, but everybody sought clues to his character. The same week that Lincoln was sworn in, Frank Leslie's illustrated newspaper tried to offer the only correct portrait yet given to the public. March the 4th, 1861, Lincoln takes the constitutional oath. Americans were worried. Would their new president let the Southern states leave the Union? As thousands watched, Lincoln began to speak. His words mixed conciliation and firmness. The government would not attack the South if the Union was not attacked. But he was about to take a solemn oath, registered in heaven, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and Union it served. He warned both sides to take note. He then concluded. He placed his hand on the Bible, raised his right hand, and repeated the oath. Almost before he finished, cheering began. But a howl arose in the South. What Southerners heard were not the words of moderation, but a declaration of war. We are not enemies. Lincoln carried drafts of his inaugural address with him from Springfield and continued to revise and edit the speech with advice from friends and colleagues. But his final text included, I am loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. Through passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic chords of memory will yet swell the course of the Union when again touched by the very better angels of our nature. The Lincoln family in 1861. Back in 1897, the framers of the Constitution left some basic questions about America unanswered. Divided. Was the United States truly one nation, or a confederacy of sovereign and separate states? Bound. How would the country founded on the belief that all men are created equal tolerate slavery, dissent, international crisis? Would civil liberties still be secure? By 1860, these unsolved questions had become ticking time bombs, ready to explode. In that year, Abraham Lincoln's election brought the nation on the brink of civil war. Even before he was sworn in, 7 states renounced their allegiance to the United States, forming the Confederate States of America. This exhibition traces Lincoln's struggle to resolve those basic questions at the most perilous moment in the nation's history. The answers would reinvent the Constitution and the promise of American life. Are we a single nation? It was an important occasion, the first public flag raising ceremony in Washington since the war began. When Lincoln hoisted the Star-Spangled Banner, it hung limply. Suddenly the breeze unfurled the flag and Lincoln smiled. Fort Sumter puts the question of ultimate test. No choice was left but to call out the war power of the government and to resist force employed by its destruction by force for its preservation. Fort Sumter. If you can find any person anywhere confessing to have any proposition of Jefferson Davis in writing for peace, embracing the restoration of the Union and the abandonment of slavery, he may come to me with safe conduct. In 1861, many Northerners expected a short war. The series of patriotic envelopes printed in New York likened the conflicts to a boxing match between Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis. In fact, in 5 short rounds, Lincoln humiliates Davis, routs the rebellion, and restores the Union to liberty. Dissent. Most civil liberties give way to save the nation. Under the cover of liberty of speech, liberty of press, and habeas corpus, they hope to keep on foot among the most efficient corps of spies, informers, suppliers, and abettors of their cause. You be the judge. The privilege of habeas corpus shall not be suspended. This lady was accused of being a spy. Rosie O'Neill Greenhow, a known Confederate spy. She was imprisoned. What is a writ of habeas corpus? Something written. You have the body. A mob attacks Union troops in Baltimore. Must civil liberties give way? As the nation fell into civil war, Lincoln faced a sea of perils. Saboteurs blew up bridges, mob blocked Union troops, spies lurked in Washington. Clearly, the president had to respond. To meet the crisis, Lincoln claimed extraordinary powers. He suspended the writ of habeas corpus. As military arrests amounted, some Americans wondered, were civil liberties being lost? Lincoln wrestled with these issues, and then we still debate them today. More strong measures. With enthusiasm for war fading and enlistments drying up, Congress in March 1863 established a national draft, the first in U.S. history. It sparked outcry, 1,000 tried to evade it. In New York City, an anti-draft riot killed 105 people and caused enormous property losses. The pace of military arrests quickened again as resistance to the draft grew. This is New York City. Free a press. The angry committee challenged the editor of Essex County Democrat. A mob tars and feathers a newspaper editor, Ambrose Kimball, in 1861. Bound. Can slavery be uprooted by a constitutional means? So I say in relation to this principle that all men are created equal, but let it be nearly as reached as we can. Slavery and the Constitution. Can slavery be uprooted? I have always hated slavery, Lincoln said. But slavery was deeply rooted in the Constitution. The war leads Lincoln down a new path. The president had grasped so many hands on the New Year's Day that he could hardly hold the pen, but slowly he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. He told his cabinet that emancipation was a military necessity, absolutely essential for the salvation of the Union. Freedom cards. Their journey to freedom. In 1863, with the situation desperate, the Emancipation Proclamation announced black men would be received into the armed services of the United States. Thousands enlisted. The nation reacts to emancipation. Lincoln's emancipation plan brought a torrent of denunciation from many white Northerners. They would fight to save the Union, but not to free the slaves. When news came that Lincoln signed the proclamation, black Northerners filled churches, sang hymns, danced in the streets. But Lincoln's critics charge him with going beyond his authority. Newly freed women, men, and children seek refuge in a Union Army camp in New Bern, North Carolina. 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment transforms the Constitution. The resolution passed in January 1865. Congress approved a constitutional amendment abolishing slavery and sent it to the states for ratification. Life mast and hand cast, the wide awake torch.